Okay, listeners, a lot of you have asked and Prep Dish has answered. Now in 2019, Prep Dish offers keto meal plans. In addition to already having paleo and gluten-free, this is such a great way for us to start off the new year eating just maybe a little bit healthier than I did over the holiday season. Okay, so here's the deal. If you haven't done it already, we have a 2-week free trial to check it out and see if it makes a difference for you. I know it has for our family. So go to prepdish.com/heygirl and choose whatever meal plan you want. Maybe you want to try all 3. See what the difference between keto or gluten-free or paleo. They actually have 3 different ones to choose from. And I would love to hear how these plans work for you. So again, prepdish.com/heygirl and check it out, their new keto meal plans.
Hey girls, and welcome to season 3 of the Hey Girl podcast with my mom, Bethany Needham. Each week, guests will share their amazing stories of following Jesus on all kinds of journeys. I hope their stories inspire you to run your race in your place. Thank you so much for listening.
Hey listeners, and welcome back to another week of the Hey Girl podcast. This is season 3, episode 22, I believe. Can we just pause and remember that time when my girl Jen and my husband Andy were like, you should do a podcast. And I had never even heard a podcast and had no idea what God would have in store just from really that first conversation. And here we are, season 3. What in the world? And so much going on. Life is crazy. I know life is crazy for a lot of you because some of you I know and some of you've written about your stories and what's going on. So I just first want to pause to, thank everyone for coming on this journey with me. It's been amazing. It's had its ups and its downs. Most of the time I'm driving my producer/husband crazy because I'm the queen of procrastination. And yet here we are, another guest this week, and this one's special. It's another nominated guest. This is something we did new for season 3. And I loved it so much. I'm seriously contemplating this for season 4, which is early on when we were getting ready to record. In case you don't know, I want to say I put it on my social media. I just asked people for nominations or suggestions of women or men, I guess, that they thought would be great guests for the podcast. And we had such a huge response that literally we had to pick and choose or basically take the first grouping of names up until we maxed out the whole season, which is awesome. And it's been fun for me because most of the season have all been new people that I've gotten to know as we went along. So today's girl, Kayla Henry, such a sweetheart. And she went to school, the Hillsong International Leadership College. I know we've had a few people on there. I had one friend that gave me a whole slew of names to interview, and they've all been so much fun. But what I really appreciate in Kayla, so much of her story, but maybe what you might be familiar with is the organization that she works for now called E22. It's an organization run by Christine Kane, and they actually fight to abolish human trafficking. And it's an incredible organization. In fact, in the show notes, you'll have links both to check out Kayla and also check out this organization that she works within. And I highly recommend take some time, go look at what they're doing and find a way to support them because it's incredible work. And I know that every little bit helps. So Kayla has an awesome story. I appreciated so much her willingness to come on and share. And at the end, I will give you my favorite moment or favorite thought from this interview where she totally connected right where I'm at in life and reminded me of something that I definitely needed reminding. Enjoy this episode with Kayla Henry. Hey Girl, another amazing guest and yet another nominated guest. And so, first of all, Kayla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So, I usually give this is how we know each other or how we came about having this conversation, which really for us was just I got an email from a friend of mine who's like, girl, you need to interview Kayla. And so I reached out and we made the connection, set this up. And then I was telling you that I was cracking up and thoroughly confused because we realized that your email has your maiden name. Everything else is your married name. And I was like, am I talking to two different people or the same?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very easily confused. It's fine.
Yes, it's funny. It's funny. They need to give you this huge list of everything you need to change when you get married, because 3 years later, I guess I'm still forgetting things, but
oh yeah. Well, in some things they don't make it easy to change. I feel like your tags or online stuff, it's always such a pain to like, oh, we need a new ID. And
you know what actually the hardest thing was frequent flyer miles. That was harder than Social Security or the DMV. It was the weirdest thing. Frequent flyer miles, so hard.
That's so random too.
I know.
But also something you don't want to lose just because you got married.
Exactly.
Oh,
matter.
So, Kayla, I am really stoked because I only know a couple of small little tidbits about your story, most of which are kind of the present day, like the ministry that you're doing, and we'll absolutely get to that. Mm-hmm. But why don't we take some time and you share your story with us? Let us know more about you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I am originally from a place called Baytown, Texas. Nobody probably knows about it because it's very small and it's in East Texas, but I love where I'm from. I grew up on a farm and I have hardworking parents and just so grateful for my upbringing. After high school, I feel like that's where a lot of things that I would deem significant moments or just a lot of life-altering moments happened. So I went to LSU in Louisiana, and it was my freshman year of college that, everyone, you're a freshman, you're like, what is life? What am I doing? Like, who somewhere decided that we should all know what we were going to do when we were 18. I'm not sure where that became a thing, but I think it needs to become less of a thing, because it's just
let's end that thing.
Right? It's like, what is life? Like, who knows anything at 18? Absolutely nobody. And if you think you do, then you truly are 18, right? So that was me to a T. And I was a freshman at LSU, and I was in a pretty terrible relationship by my own doing in a lot of ways. I had a hard time with guys all through high school. Just didn't know the things, didn't know the lines, didn't really have strong moral lines when it comes to all of that stuff. And so when I got to college, there was a lot of confusion, and it was early October of my freshman year of college. And I was laying in my bed in my dorm room, and I just said, God, if you're real, come and fix this. And that was really the extent of how I knew to pray. Like, that was all I knew of a prayer. So the very next day I walked out of class, and there was this flyer laying on the floor, and the flyer basically said 220U ministry service, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, I knew it was some sort of Christian thing for college students. And so I went home that night and I asked my roommate, I was like, I really want to go to this thing. It's like a church thing. And she literally said to me, what would we do at church? Like, it was just such a foreign concept to us at that point in life, because we just really hadn't grown up doing it a lot. And I'm from the South, like, we're culturally Christian, good morals, good values, Christmas, Easter, all that good stuff, but it was never real to me. So she knew I was in a bad place. She's like, you know what, I'm going to do this for you. So the next day we go to this church service, and it was just one of the wildest moments of my life. Because first of all, they sat us like right in the middle of the middle section, and everyone's like singing and literally dancing. And, a lot of what now I would see is fun and normal, I was like, what is this? Like, all I wanted to do was leave, but because of where they had set me, I couldn't go anywhere. I was like, I'm stuck. And the pastor started preaching, and I really couldn't tell you what he said or what the sermon was about, but at the end I just felt like my heart was going to come out of my chest. And he basically said, if there's anyone in this room that wants to receive Jesus, like, I want you to come down to the front. And it was like, without even knowing what was happening, my feet just like picked me up, and I was like, no, no, don't do this, but like, yet I'm walking at the same time. And I end up down the front with one other guy in this room of like over 1,000 college students, which is so bold to me to think back that I actually did that. But I guess when the Holy Spirit is knocking, it just, something happens, something that defies what makes sense in the moment. And I gave my life to the Lord that night. And I would love to say that everything was uphill from there, but unfortunately it wasn't at all. It was actually the complete opposite. Like, me and my roommate were walking back to our room that night, and she was like, so you're a Christian? And I was like, I guess so, and just like our foundation for what faith was non-existent. And she was like, so I'm going to smoke. Do you want to smoke, or do you not smoke anymore? And I was like, I don't know. I'll find out later. Just it was so real. And then the girl that I met that night at church, she invited me to their church. I was like, oh, well, my parents are Baptist, so I should probably go to a Baptist church. And so I started just like going to all these random churches that I could find. And I didn't know what I was doing. And then an old relationship came back, and it was like, I tumbled even further into this really dark place than I'd ever been before. But I think then there was a tension, because I had a genuine encounter with Jesus, and I knew that there was something more, but then I was living the life that I had always lived. And it was like this wrestle began to just erupt in my heart. And the next 2 years were pretty terrible, like a pretty terrible 2 years in a lot of ways. I was home one weekend 2 years later. My brother, who was a youth pastor at the time, because he had gotten saved 3 years before I did, he overdosed on the floor of a bar, and the Lord said, get up, I'm not done with you. And he got saved in rehab. So very radical story that my brother has as well. He's an amazing man. He was a youth pastor at the time, and I was at church with him, and I was working the sound booth because I was trying to hide, but pretending like I cared about production, but really I was hiding from everybody. And I just watched them. They're listening to Family Force 5. I don't know if you know who that is, but they're listening to Family Force 5, and they're just jumping and dancing. And I just saw this joy on them. I saw this joy that I was so desperate for, because my heart was just in a horrible place. And in that moment, I felt the Lord say to me, like, I didn't know at the time, but I know now to be the Holy Spirit. He just said, you can have that if you'll just come back to me. And I just broke in that moment. And so the next day I got in my car, I drove back to Baton Rouge, and I called this one girl who had been calling me and texting me and trying to follow up with me for 2 years. And I'd literally been ignoring her. Like, I was actually being quite a horrible person. And I said, hey, I know you invited me to that weekend getaway, and I want to go. And like, she was literally like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I'll be at your house straight away. Like, don't move. And it was actually so cool to see that, looking back now, like, what a testimony about someone who really believed in discipling people and actually believed that someone's life could be changed even when they didn't know it or want it. Like, she believed in me when she had no reason to. And that's such a cool thing to always look back on whenever there's people in my life that, maybe we've had a great encounter and they've shown interest in changing their life, but then they just seem all over the place. Like, to not give up on people, because this girl never gave up on me. And if, when I had that moment, when I knew I wanted to come back to the Lord, if I hadn't heard from her in 2 years, I probably wouldn't have known what to do next. But I knew, because there was someone there. So I went on a weekend encounter with this church, and I mean, I guess long story short, my entire life just changed. There was a night where I could genuinely say I just was set free. Like, there was just so much bondage over my life. And I know that everyone's journey is different. Some people find freedom over a period of time, and then others, it's just radical in a moment. And I think that for me, that was my story. Like, there were specific categories where I could say, like, this has me bound. This had, in one evening, I just really saw the Lord set my life free. So then at that point in my story, I can say I never looked back. I left that weekend and I got involved in that church. And it was really cool because, I've often heard people say that your salvation is about you for about 5 minutes and then it's about others. And I think that the Lord was so kind to give me this little incubator season where it really, like, he didn't ask anything of me, but it really was about him and me. And he put these people around me who had been Christians for years and just actually showed me what it looked like to walk with him, showed me that walking with him was fun and walking with him was joyful, and all these things that I didn't really know how to navigate, because it's one thing to encounter Jesus. It's another thing to understand how that looks on a daily basis and to walk it out very practically. And it was just so cool to see these people come alongside me and show me what that looks like. Mm-hmm. So I graduated from college that year, and a year later I moved back to Texas, to Austin, Texas, and I took a job that was not very fun at all, to be honest. It was one of those things where I felt this tension of, okay, what do I want to do with my life? But I graduated, need to get a job. And I honestly, now when I talk to girls that are in, because where I work at E22, we have 20 to 30 volunteers or interns. We have a really strong internship program at any given time. So there's always college girls in our office. And anytime I get to talk to someone, I say to them, take your time. Like, don't sit on the couch and watch Netflix, but take your time, because there's this pressure to, I've graduated, I need to get a job. And we jump in to life without really navigating and going on the journey of what is life? Like, what is my life? What do I see for my life? You know, I love that my husband's Australian, and they're always encouraged to take a gap year. And culturally, that's just very normal. And that's not something we do very much. And I just always tell girls, I'm like, give yourself a moment and let go of the pressure, and figure out what life looks like for you. So I didn't do that. So I took a job at an IT company in Austin, and I was just crazy miserable for 6 months. I mean, if you were into IT sales, it's such a good field and you can make such good money, but I wasn't. So it wasn't a good fit, basically. So I was in my car one day. I was driving down the highway home. I was probably crying. I cried a lot in that 6-month period to my mom quite often. I was listening to Hosanna, the song by Brooke Ligertwood Fraser, whichever last name you want to use for her. And it got to the line that said, break my heart for what breaks yours. And I heard that line, and I turned off the song, and I just began to pray that prayer. I said, Lord, break my heart for what breaks yours. And anytime I tell people my journey with E22, I always tell them, if you ever pray that prayer, be careful, because that is one prayer that I think the Lord really listens to. And he will show you what's breaking his heart. And it's not going to be the same for everyone, but if you pray it and you mean it and you don't mind having your life completely turned upside down, he will answer that prayer. So it was about 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a church service, and Christine Kane, who at the time had no idea who she was, now is my boss. She's speaker, evangelist, amazing activist from Australia. She spoke about E22, this organization that she had founded just a few years before. And she showed this story that talked about human trafficking. And when she said the phrase human trafficking, I mean, now I feel like we've done a really great job as a society of talking about it more. This was almost 8 years ago, and it just wasn't on the radar in a lot of ways. It was, but it wasn't. When she said human trafficking, I was like, what is this? And she shared the story of a girl named Natalia that had been trafficked from Bulgaria to Greece. And she was on a blind date, and the guy put something in her coffee, drugged her, put her into the trunk of a car, drove her across the border, chained her to a bed in a brothel. And from there on, she was servicing 30 to 40 men every night for the next 2 years. And whenever she was rescued and brought into E22's care, they found out she was HIV positive because of something that had happened to her with a client. And when I heard that story, when I was told that there's millions of people that they have that story, it just, something in me clicked. It was like that prayer in that moment, and this moment of understanding an injustice that I never knew existed. It was like, this is the thing. This is the thing I've been wrestling over. This is the thing I've been waiting for. This is the thing I've been asking God to reveal to me. And when I look back on that year that I was in Austin, it was actually quite an isolated time. Like I went to church and I had friends, and of course there was amazing moments, but in a lot of ways, I mean, I can distinctly remember night after night sitting in my closet. I don't know why I chose to sit in my closet. I had a bedroom. I just chose the closet. It was a nice walk-in closet, and just turning on worship music and just crying and praying. And at the time, like those moments and those seasons don't feel fun, like at all. But when you look back, you realize that it was a necessary wrestle to get to the next thing. Like so often there's a wrestle that has to happen. And I really don't know at times if we can move into the next season or the next layer or the next level of what God has for us if we're not willing to really get on our knees and wrestle with him for it. So when I look back, I know that that is what that year was. So after that, I got a little bit wild and I applied for an internship with A21 and they accepted me. Kind of long story, weird things happened, but they accepted me. And at the end of that year, I picked up my stuff and I moved to Australia, which is how and why my husband is Australian. And I went there to do a 3-month internship with A21. And I think it's so funny, like the Lord tells us that. And the Lord tells us something, and then we so often take what he said and we add to it, and I think in that season, the Lord told me, go. Like, that's what he said. He said, go. Like, you've waited because there's always a waiting. There's a stir, there's a wait, and then there's a release, like so often, and God's not a God of formulas, but I have found that that is so often how things happen. And there was the stir, and then I waited, and then he told me about A21, and that was the release that I had been waiting for. And all he said was go. But I took go and I started adding all these little layers to it. Like, I'm going to go intern, then I'm going to come back to Texas, and I'm going to start an organization, all these things that the Lord never said any of that. All he said was go. But it's like, it makes us feel better, I think, as humans to have a plan. And it's just, I'm sure he's just like, okay, I'll let you have a plan, but just so you know, that's actually not what we're doing. So,
but if it makes you feel better.
Yeah, exactly. I do feel like sometimes he's like, okay, we'll just let you have that one for now, but you'll see, So I went to Australia and I was getting close to the end of my 3 months doing the internship, and I started getting really nervous and restless. It's like, I'm going to go to grad school. I'm going to study journalism. I started trying to make all these plans because in my head, I'm like, I'm about to finish here. I have no plan. I don't know what my life will look like. And I remember one day sitting at the office, like I'm at the A21 office this season, this moment that I had waited so long for. And now I'm here and I'm worrying about what the next thing is going to look like. And it's like, wait a second, what? And the Lord just said to me, stop. Just stop. It's like, go, stop, go, stop. He said, just stop making plans, stop planning. And not that planning is always bad, but in that moment for me, it was, and just be present. And that was probably the first time in my life that I just let go of everything. I stopped having a plan. I stopped trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I think it was really a huge lesson for me in being present. I think we live in a world where we have a lot of access to a lot of things that aren't happening where we are. And our phones are so amazing, but they can be a little bit of a double-edged sword in that way. And so often we are somewhere and then our head is over there, and then we get there and then our head goes to the next thing. And it's actually not, like, the Lord only promises today. And I feel like being present is actually something that he asks of us in every single season. I think that to go to the next season means being completely faithful and completely present with this season. And I think that really is how he wants to carry us through this journey we call life. And so at the end of the 3 months, I knew that he was telling me to stay. So I stayed 3 more months and got myself a job so that I could live. And at the end of 6 months, he asked me to go to Bible college. And I say he asked me because it was like I felt it in my spirit. Like I knew what he was saying, but they would show the promos for Bible college at church on Sunday nights. And I would literally put my head down. And I was hiding from what I knew he was saying. So I was like, I want to go home. I want to go back to America. Hard life living in Australia, so silly, but I did. And he actually about a week before I applied for Bible college, because where I was living in Sydney, the church that I was a part of has a Bible college. So it was like, it would have been a natural progression of staying there. He woke me up in the middle of the night and he said to me, there are things that I have for you in your future, but you have to go through a season of preparation. And it was in that moment that I knew I kind of had to do it. And so I did. And then, I mean, a month later, a month into Bible college, I was like, I couldn't imagine not being here. Like, this is the most amazing. And it's so funny how we're never really going to know how amazing things are until we're obedient, when it's a blind obedience. I think blind obedience takes a lot of faith, and it takes killing and squishing and silencing a lot of fear and rationale. But that's the adventure with God. If we're willing to live that way, if we're willing to be blindly obedient over and over again, I think that's where it's the abundance that he wants to give us, the abundant things that we couldn't even imagine. So I did Bible college for 2 years, and it was amazing. Somewhere in the mix of that, I met Josh, who is now my husband. Somewhere along the way, E22, who I'd continued to intern with all through Bible college, decided, I guess she's not going to go anywhere, so we're going to give her a paycheck. So they pseudo hired me working part-time. And it was just a really incredible 3 years of growth and learning what it means to be faithful with the things that God has given you. And yeah, just understanding God in a whole different way. And then after that, I moved to California. And so that was 4 years ago. It was a natural progression. I finished Bible college. We at E22 have an office in California. It was like, okay, does this make sense? You know, it was a very kind of natural conversation. And so I moved here, and I've been here for 4 years now, and I'm married, and I have a dog, as you all heard. Yeah. And I live in California now. So that's kind of my story.
That's awesome. So you still work for E22?
I do. I still work for E22. Yes.
Yeah. And we did say you had been married for 3 years, the dog, the job, all the things. So tell me, for your own walk with Jesus, what does it look like for you? Just because you mentioned earlier on, I love that oftentimes the discipleship part can get lost. Like, people come to know the Lord, but how do you learn to practically walk that out? So here you are years down the line, and a lot has happened in your life. What does practically walking out your relationship with Jesus look like now, where you're at?
Yeah, no, that's really good. So a few years ago, I heard a sermon from, honestly, I feel terrible that I don't know his name because I reference it so often, but from this amazing man. And he basically talked about there's a difference between our identity, our calling, and our assignment in life, and that our identity is who we are in Christ, and that will never change. Our calling is why we were on the planet, and our assignment is what we do. And usually our assignment is an outworking of our calling. And I think that, especially being in full-time ministry, it's really a journey of realizing that even though your assignment is directly to serve, like, I literally get paid to serve Jesus, which I never take for granted how amazing that is, that it's not my identity, and it's actually not my calling, it's my assignment. And so I think for me, like, the practical outworking is really having ears and eyes open at all times to be like, okay, Lord, first of all, just because I'm in full-time ministry does not mean I don't have to do anything else. And realizing, I think I realize more and more that serving Jesus really means making your life all about people. And I don't do that perfectly at all, but it's just, at the end of the day, what else matters? And so at work, the way that I get to help people is that we pull people out of slavery, and it's a very tangible outworking of freedom and justice, something that the Bible talks so much about. But outside of that, it's how do you love people? Like, when you have the moments and you have to choose the task or a person, do you choose the person? Or when someone needs to have coffee or wants to have dinner, but you're busy, because we use this word busy. I'm just like, so over the word busy, and do you choose the person over the things you need to do? And I think I've been really practicing, hopefully well, definitely not perfectly, a lot in the last few years, of this whole idea of making life completely about people again, and choosing community over vocation and getting things done and moving forward, because we just have such a like move forward fast world. And I just think that you look at Jesus's time on the planet, and it was literally all about people. And so I think that's a lot of the practical outworking, at work, like very practically, if I have to have a hard conversation with someone on my team that has maybe done something that I need to address with them, I will not have that conversation until I've prayed for them in my quiet time, because I feel like when I pray for people, it realigns my heart to see them the way God is seeing them. And then when I have that conversation, all of a sudden I'm saying things differently because God has softened my heart for who they are and not just the thing that's happened. So yeah, I think making life all about people again has been something that's been a very practical part of my walk with Jesus.
And we mentioned obviously A21, and it just occurred to me now, there'll be people listening that are like, I don't know what that is. But what do you actually do for the organization? What is your specific role?
Yeah, totally. So it's been an organic progression, which is all things at A21, which is part of the reason I love our organization, because we're just organically growing at all times. So 10 years old, organization that fights human trafficking. I started off as our database coordinator, which yes, like that is a thing. So I basically input data into the database. So when I say I learned lessons about being faithful with the small, like it was quite literal, like putting data in. So anyways, that's how I started. And it's just kind of been an organic progression over the years of gap fill, and now I oversee our global supporter engagement department. So basically we have abolitionists. You've heard the word abolitionist. In the 1800s, there was William Wilberforce, who led this army of abolitionists to fight slavery in Great Britain. And now we see people who are standing up against human trafficking. We call them modern day abolitionists. And so basically our department gets to steward those people. So one aspect of it is financial. So it's anyone who does fundraising for us. And then Walk for Freedom, which is like a global event that we have every October where people can come and walk. I think this year we're going to have close to 500 walks in over 40 countries, which will be really cool. And then it's a team. So it's abolitionist teams, people in their local community putting on events, raising awareness, educating others, doing fundraisers. So basically those are the three arms of our supporter engagement department, because it's us engaging with supporters. So I get the honor of overseeing that team.
That's awesome. And I love the example too, because those who have heard of A21 might be like, that's amazing. You get to work for A21. And it's such a healthy reminder of, even in maybe like these dream ministries or jobs or whatever it is, what does it look like to be faithful in small things in that? And like databases have to happen.
Right.
And
exactly.
They're not everybody's top, like, what I want to do with my life? Just database.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Having that servant heart of just what I want to do is what needs to be done. And that's where I feel like the, filling gaps. If there's a need here, okay, let me fill the gap.
Totally.
I love that example, just of having that heart of, I just want to do what's needed. And that progression of how, it just makes me think of that with, you were faithful in the little things and God continues to just bring more on your plate, which is awesome.
There was this moment where, it's a constant practice, but a moment of actually just letting go of anything that resembles self-promotion. And I think that that's such a war to our flesh, and it's not something that comes naturally. But when you actually realizing that the Lord will take you where he wants to take you, and we don't need to position ourselves or take ourselves or strive. He says, by my spirit, I do things by my spirit. And so just kind of constantly being like, and I'm going to lay down my life again, and I'm going to lay down the things again, and I'm going to lay down my dreams again, and that he can actually do so much more with them than we can. And when I was in Bible college, one of the things that was so often asked was, what are your dreams? What are your dreams? Which is a cool question. I actually think it's cool to talk about what your dreams are. But I do feel like my theology has kind of evolved quite a bit in that area of really actually not believing that our dreams are the point. I think that we have dreams or we have things in our heart and we give them to God. But I actually think we focus on the Lord, like we focus on him, and then he will give us dreams, and they'll be his dreams, but they'll become our dreams because all we want is him. And then he gives us everything we need to then outwork the dream that he gave to us, and I just feel like it's like this almost countercultural way of thinking about what do I want to do with my life. It's like, well, what does the Lord have? And then that will become a dream. I don't know. That's something that I feel like has changed for me definitely over the last 7 years of just how I view dreams.
That's awesome. And you're right. It's extremely countercultural, but how many things in God's word are totally that way where you're like, yeah, this is not how it's working here.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, well, first of all, it's been amazing to hear your story. I'm wondering if you're up for it. I have just a handful of rapid fire, get to know you questions. Are you feeling good on your toes right now? You're just...
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to take a sip of coffee to get me ready
Awesome.
For the rapid fire.
You are a woman after my own heart. Okay, so we will start.
All right.
Our first question. Now, this one, we are a New England-based podcast, so I'm right outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So This one is very much kind of angled that way. But I'm curious, do you have Dunkin' Donuts where you live?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Perfect. Then I'm leaving the question as is.
Oh, no.
And we'll decide whether the New England population embraces you or...
Well, this could fail royally.
Yeah, no pressure.
Okay. No
But if you're headed out, you want to grab a coffee to go, are you swinging through Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
No, do I have to choose one or the other?
Yep.
I feel like I have to choose Dunkin' Donuts with the preface you gave it. I actually really love local coffee shops. I try to avoid chains at all costs.
Girl, I like that answer. I actually sometimes include that in the, so.
It is. And I don't know if oat milk has hit the East Coast yet, but I'm obsessed with oat milk. So if you have oat milk, you won me.
Oh, I see. I love little like mom and pop shops, and especially ones. We have an amazing place, Armenos. It's like down the street from us, but they actually make their own beans. Like, and you can go and buy your coffee beans, but they always have like coffee that you can try. Oh, it's so good. So good.
That's what we're talking about.
So if you're going to chat with a girlfriend, nothing heavy, nothing too intense, would you rather text or call?
Call.
Love it. If you're taking a long road trip, would you rather drive or ride?
Ride.
Surrender the rights. Okay, so are you a reader? Do you like reading books?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm curious, what is the last book that you read that you loved and would recommend?
Well, I'm actually currently reading The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller.
Oh, so good.
Whether you're married or not, but I would put it more in the category of like a broccoli book. Like, this is so good, and I know it's so good for me, and I am going to finish it, but it's not like lay on the beach and read kind of vibes. So that's really good. I'm sitting at my desk right now, so I'm like looking over here. I actually finished Whisper by Mark Batterson recently, which is about hearing the voice of God. Very good. He's a very factual writer, so he'll use like outer space and atmospheres and facts about geography and like all, so it's very fascinating. I love the way he writes because he uses a lot of facts when he writes his books. So that one's really good. And then those are two that I've just read recently.
Love it. What was the last movie that you watched that you actually spent money to see? So you could go to the theater, bought it, rented, whatever.
Oh gosh. Oh, I'm such a repeat the old movie watcher. I'm never up to speed. I think actually the last movie that I paid to see was, is it called Home Again with Reese Witherspoon? Right? Home Again. Yeah. It's a rom-com, a cute little PG-13 rom-com with Reese Witherspoon. Yeah, that was the last one. I think it was like 4 or 5 months ago. It's very cute.
That's awesome. I was just thinking mine was the I Feel Pretty, that one.
I want to see that.
I cracked up through the whole thing, and I made my husband go with me, and he actually enjoyed it. He wasn't like he's, posting all over, oh, everyone needs to see it. But he didn't fall asleep, which is a bonus.
Put that on my list.
So if you're going to go watch a movie and you can bring your favorite snack in with you, what are you bringing in?
White cheddar popcorn.
Oh, yes. What's your favorite brand?
It's the black bag.
Yes.
With like the yellow, like
the smart food one.
Yes, that one. Yes, I could eat that for dinner. Like really. I mean, I do eat that for dinner actually.
That's not bad. Popcorn's good. Okay, so if I was to hand you $100 bill and said you can only use this for something fun for you, what would you do with it?
Okay, well, my instinct would be Disneyland, but I have a season pass, so maybe it would have to be something different. Okay, this is going to sound really weird, but I really enjoy laser tag.
Really?
I turned 30 yesterday, and so I don't know if like I should be still up, but I think laser tag is so fun. It's like the painless version of paintball, and it's just so thrilling, and I'm really competitive as well. So I would probably go play laser tag with friends.
That is amazing. I love it. I'm a paintball girl myself, but I like laser tag. Yeah.
It's like the version where you don't get hurt, you know?
That's true. You leave without welts.
Right.
Exactly. All right. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
And every time I interview someone in the LA, the California area, I'm always like, you could even potentially be stalking this person, because I'm wondering, who is your Hollywood crush?
Oh, that's easy. Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts for all of time. Julia Roberts. That's like classic, classy Hollywood lady. And she just got Instagram 2 months ago. So not that it's a big deal, but I'm very excited to follow how she lives life.
I love that you're my first guest that has given their girl Hollywood crush, because I was going to be like, well, you can't marry Julia Roberts.
Oh, you meant like that. I just thought you meant like my favorite person in Hollywood.
I agree with you on Julia Roberts, though. Let's just.
In all of Hollywood.
Yes.
Oh, guy. Oh, gosh. Is it weird that I don't know?
No, I've even said it could be a like past one, because some people, like when their kids or teenagers, had that like, oh, the lead singer from whatever, but not necessarily anymore.
Oh, I have tons of past ones. You know who I was obsessed with Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Yes.
Yeah, I was obsessed with him. I don't even know where he is anymore. I don't even know how old he is, but yeah, he was my top for like close to a decade, I'm sure.
At the risk of sounding creepy, he's my age. Actually, he might be a year older. He might be 35.
Okay.
But he really did disappear. He disappeared from like, as in like, not even, you can't look up updated things. The most current thing that he you saw him was in Last Man Standing with like Tim Allen has his own show. He did like a cameo, like he appeared on that show, which is crazy. What? So yeah, I don't know what he ended up, so I turned my kids on to Home Improvement and we watched it, and that got me like, okay, where is he now? Yeah. Right. Not going to find him.
Okay.
Guess he was done with Hollywood. He's like, I'm out. Peace.
I don't blame him. That's okay.
I know.
We'll find some normalcy. It's good.
I know, seriously. It just makes you like him even more, though. Like, good for you.
Exactly. I love that I said Julia Roberts. That's amazing.
I knew what you meant. And anything Julia Roberts is in, I'm instantly like, oh, I want to see that, because she's so amazing. And her laugh, you just want to sit and listen to her laugh.
Runaway Bride forever.
Yes.
Yeah. So good.
Oh, well, this was so much fun.
Yes, great. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for coming on. You can tell Benjamin Button, I'll leave him in. Mm-hmm. Those are like his special moments.
He'll like that. He's very selfish.
As he should be. He's a dog. So, well, Kayla, this has been great. So grateful that you were able to come on.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay, so part of the interview, which was, I want to say, pretty close or towards the end anyways of her interview, she was talking about her season of life. She used some language that we use in our household sometimes in conversations with my husband about the difference between our calling or purpose and our assignment. And this has been kind of huge for me recently. And I feel like it's one of those things I have to come back to again and again because I get so sucked in to my assignments, the things that I'm doing in the here and now, that I can easily blur the lines between that and what I'm really called to. And in doing that, especially now that I don't actually work in a like full-time ministry position, I can forget that my calling is not just in Christian settings, like especially this calling of not just knowing God, but making him known is something that should be flowing through every assignment I have, regardless of what it looks like. And so I'll give you the example right now. For me, obviously, I, to this day and 10 years ago and 2 years ago when my life looked very different, I'm called to know God and to make him known, right? Like I want to have a personal relationship with Jesus, but I also want to share him with others. I want to tell others about him. Where does this hope, this grace, this forgiveness come from? And so when I did church ministry, that was almost like a given. Yeah, you obviously talk about this. You work at a church, but now I work in the, restaurant industry. And even though Chick-fil-A is known for having Christian roots, it's not a Christian business that I work in that I work with a lot of people who don't share my faith beliefs. I've had the question asked before, which always cracks me up. Like, is everybody at Chick-fil-A a Christian? And no, we are an incredibly diverse team, which I love. I love that Chick-fil-A has an open door policy in terms of welcoming anybody and everybody at giving them the opportunity to work on our team as part of our culture. And so all that to say, here I am in this new environment where it's not a given that I talk about Jesus and about my faith, but it's still the calling on my life. And this Chick-fil-A assignment, I don't know how long it's for, but it's no less or more important than when I worked at a church. And for you right now, like, what is that assignment? Or you might have multiple assignments, which is true in my life. Like, I have an assignment that's much more long-term as a mom. Like, I have kids under my roof that are part of what God has called me to do in my assignment for this season, to mother them. And then obviously my spouse, being a wife, things like that. There are assignments that go for a long, long time. And then there are assignments that may just be for a short season. And remembering that our identity and who we are in Christ isn't wrapped up in that assignment. The assignment's just part of our race. And so I appreciated so much just Kayla mentioning that, because I needed that reminder. I just did, in my job, in my home, just that my identity and who I am is not what I do. And again, that can be super easy for me to confuse or blur those lines. So whatever it was in her story, I just really hope that this story was something that encouraged you again this week. So grateful for those of you who have been writing in and sharing just your connection with all these different testimonies. I'm going to encourage you, if you have people in your life or someone that you're like, oh my goodness, you should definitely reach out to this person. We will be starting another recording season very soon, and almost time to start season 4. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. If you've got names, send them in. Obviously, I can't make any guarantees, but we would sure love to hear your recommendations. And who knows, maybe season 4, you might hear somebody that is a real life friend in your life. Once again, thanks so much for listening. And I want to encourage you today, run your race in your place and keep being awesome for Jesus. Bye.